we are fortunate enough to be joined by Janet Cobb, who is a certified fundraising executive, or CFRE, as many of us call it, and professional fundraising coach here at Bonterra, as well as with her own practice and consultancy. So Janet specializes in working with small to mid-sized nonprofit organizations across the country to help them build capacity and acquire the skills they need to support and expand their efforts. From growing development efforts from the ground up to working in well-established offices, Janet really brings the knowledge and understanding of the challenges faced by nonprofits to each of her projects. And she can do that because she's held a wide variety of positions within the nonprofit space, including communications manager, director of development, executive director, and has handled budgets anywhere from 50,000 to 8 million. So really just a wealth of knowledge. And if you've been on one of Janet's webinars before, you know that. If you're lucky enough to work with her here at Bonterra as a coach, you know kind of all the great wisdom she has to share. So super excited to have Janet. And she is joined by Kate McInroy, who is an account executive here at Bonterra. Kate was born in Iowa and is a graduate of Iowa State University. She's been working in the nonprofit sector since the age of 17 and is now the board president for Cook Inclusive, a nonprofit based in Carbondale, Colorado, that offers inclusive employment and therapeutic recreation service for disabled, deaf, queer, and neurodivergent communities. In her role here at Bonterra as an account executive, Kate helps organizations kickstart their fundraising efforts using our tools. So two great perspectives for you today. We're super excited to have both of you. Really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to chat with us. So I will take my appropriate back seat and let the stars of the show take over.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Janet, and I'm here from Chicago today. And I want to begin by saying that my Zoom is not cooperating these last few days, actually. And so if I get kicked out, Kate and Amanda are going to take it from wherever I get kicked out from. Trust that, we are here to help you, but we can't help technology. It's just, it is what it is. So I will do my best. At some point, I may need to just turn off my camera so you can continue to hear my voice. But hopefully, none of that will happen in this hour, hopefully. Okay, so we're all here to talk about writing effective appeals at year end to raise money. And the first thing I have to say is that calendar year end and giving days like Giving Tuesday aren't a motivating reason for people to give. That is not what is driving people to be philanthropic and to be generous. But these days of the calendar are opportunities to make a motivating, compelling ask. So today's focus is really on what makes a motivating, compelling ask. Would you agree, Kate, that is the case?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times throughout the years, we often think like, when do we want to ask? And a really easy time is to ask at the end of the year because people know that's going to be coming. So we'll get into that for sure with some more details, but I definitely agree on that point.
Right. So the first thing, I'm just diving in because we've got an hour and there's a lot to cover. So the first thing you want to do is think about your theme. And, theme can be nebulous, but really what we're talking about is if you're communicating with your community between today, let's say, and December 31st, that's about 50 some days. What's tying all of those communications together? What is making it so that people recognize that this is all one big effort? And that's what your theme is. And you can use all sorts of things to create your theme. But what you want to make sure you're thinking about when you think about your theme is, who is this to and who is it for? So who are you writing to and who are you writing to them about? The for whom is the beneficiary, the person, the group of people that are going to benefit from this effort. The second thing is you really want to underscore why all of this matters, right? What is the driving force behind your cause, behind your messaging for year end? Why do people care? What belief systems do people have that are tying them to your organization? So why? And then how and what, right? How do you do what you do? What do you do? How do you do it? And this right here is really important to remember, that you don't have to talk about everything you do, right? You just have to talk about something you do. Okay. So we'll talk more about that as we go. And then when you're thinking about your theme, you want to make sure that you're thinking about what you want people to feel, what mood you want them to have when they're reading your communications, when they're seeing your social media posts, when they're watching a video. What is the feel and the mood? And what is the call to action? What do you want them to do? You've got to think of all of those things as you create your theme. Did I miss anything, Kate?
I think those are kind of great foundational pieces. I often get the question a lot of like, where do I start with these appeals? And this is just like a lovely way to like get down to basics. Like, who am I really trying to reach out to here? And like, why would I be doing that? Because then you think about it on the reciprocating side, people read that and understand what you're asking for and who you do, or who you're, reaching out to, what you want to do. That's definitely one of those things that I think is a good, again, fundamental, build those blocks up first, and then you can go from there.
All right. So what does that mean in reality? Then how do you implement it? First thing is, there are two examples here of very clear themes. One is Red Cross, and Red Cross is such a known entity that as soon as you see the Red Cross, you kind of know, and that's a theme in and of itself. But you can see here in all the different channels they're using for this specific campaign, they're using this woman hugging this child, right? And that is the thing that carries their theme, right? So whether you're seeing it on a billboard or on your computer or on your phone, that woman and child embracing, embraced in a hug is what's going to resonate. It's like an extension of the brand for this moment, right? And the second one is the statement, I don't know what we'd do without ASP. And in all of the channels that this organization used, their letter, their YouTube channel, their social media, they used some variation of this family and this child in the pink. There are some other photos of the child in the pink, right? I don't know what we'd do without ASP. That theme ran throughout everything that they shared during this season. Do you notice any other elements that I missed here, Kate?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, kind of continuing to see that same picture, like that's what, like psychology 101, you're going to keep starting to put that mission together, and then you're like, I've seen this before, and maybe I should read a little bit more into what's going on here, and people can start to really delve into what's in the message itself if they're starting to see those common themes. And that helps with that marketing piece, but again, also like the brand, like you had mentioned. So big piece to keep seeing the same thing over and over again. Even though it might seem redundant, it's actually really important to continue to see this is what that organization is.
That's why it works. Redundancy works.
Right.
Right. I mean, all the big marketing companies know that redundancy works, but
For
it's
sure.
not just redundancy of your logo.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah, with this, it's like
redundancy
a
of
theme.
other
Mm-hmm.
things. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Great.
love that.
And Janet, I mean, I think something that to call out, and Kate, is you have to have multiple channels in order to do that, right? So I know that a lot of times folks kind of rely really heavily on one channel. And so I think a key here to point out too is that you have to have multiple channels in order to have a theme run through many of them.
Because you want people wherever they turn, they see it. Yeah. All right, here are a few more examples. This one is the dog, and yes, dogs are easy. Everybody wants to give to dogs. But no, I wanted to pull these ideas up because you can see they use it on their envelope, right? And the only time you should use a window envelope that looks like a bill for fundraising is if there's a dog or a child or something drawing you in to say, this isn't a bill. This isn't a bill. Don't be afraid of it, right? But you see, they have this on the bus stop. I wanted to bring these up because there are ways to move beyond social media, email, and snail mail, especially if your lists are small. If your lists are small. Now, you have to think about where you are in the world, whether or not a bus stop or a billboard would be effective, but don't ignore it. The other place that I saw something a few years ago that I like to point out is a movie theater. I was sitting at the movies and a nonprofit had their fundraising appeal messaging at the movie theater. So if you're trying to reach new audiences, think outside the box a little bit, but then it has to tie back. So this puppy is one tie, and the other one is believe you can make a difference. They're talking straight to the donor. Believe you can make a difference. And they're like, what do you mean I can make a difference? And then they read more, or they look more, and they scan the QR code and do all the things. So those are the things that I wanted to point out here. Kate or Amanda, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I think to kind of echo your experience, I have a local coffee shop that's just within walking distance of me. I go all the time, and I look at the billboard as I'm waiting for, or the little cork board that's in front as I'm waiting for, a coffee order. And there was a couple new things on there recently, and they caught my eye right away. And one of them was a nonprofit, which I was like, usually I feel like people think that wouldn't work. But of course, I'm reading through, I'm looking through, and it had that QR code, it had the message. It was very simple, but it also was really eye-catching. And so again, don't be hesitant in like the small impacts that could really, people could see that. People can, share that with others. There's always a community to tap into there. So that was a really unique experience, similar to the movie theater experience that I think, again, it's outside of what we think of when we think of fundraising appeals.
Yes, and we just ended in the United States of America an election cycle, and no matter where you turned, there was some political, and we think we get tired of it, but the difference between political advertising and nonprofit advertising is those who don't care about your cause are going to ignore you, just like I do about the causes of the political things I don't care about. I ignore them. But people who care about what you care about, people who care about dogs are going to be drawn to this picture. People who care about children are going to be drawn to one of those other two pictures. The pervasiveness of it all, to me, of political advertising is a reminder to nonprofits that we don't communicate enough. We don't communicate enough. So try all the things, try new things, try one new thing this year if you can.
Yep, fully agree. I think people sometimes even come to me and ask, like, do you think I'm going to be bothering somebody? No, they'll ignore it if they don't want to see it. Bother them. Go ahead and show them what your organization does. And the worst thing, like Janet could say, they just ignore it, but people who care will engage.
And I just had a call from a client this morning who said they got a call from an angry person who got their email. And the thing, and they were a little upset, and I said, one person called you. One person of how many thousands of communications you've sent? One person called you, right? And there are clearly some other things going on.
For
So
sure.
we typically don't communicate enough. So if you do nothing else this year end, communicate more. As long as it's good. And that's what we're getting into next. Okay. So the other thing to remember is that people who care about dogs, people who care about children, people who care about whatever it is your cause is, theater, the arts, the symphony, whatever it is, they have a vision of the world that they want. Everyone carries around how they wish the world were, right? It is our job as an organization to help them see that if they give through our organization, we will help them create their vision of the world. We often in the nonprofit arena say, give today to help us fulfill our mission. And what we really need to be saying, and we have to figure out how to say it well, is give to us today and we'll help you fulfill your mission. We are the actors that are helping you to bring about your vision through your donation. So we have to, in all the communications that we put out, we have to help people see how the world will be made more wonderful if they give through our organization. Any thoughts on that, Kate or Amanda?
No, I think that it's just a great way to kind of flip the way you think about it. I think sometimes it's just we're asking for donations, we're asking for gifts. That is what we're doing, but we have this great, lovely organization right with us. And as someone who works on a board, I get to see that loveliness happen all the time with my organization. I see what actually happens. And so then when we get to share those great outcomes too, like it really brings that all back together where it's like we're making impact in our communities by doing this and having donations come through. So yeah, I definitely think it's a great way to view it.
We're doing it for you. They're giving us money so that we can do this work for them because they're busy doing other work that allows them to make the money to give to us to, right? It's we're in this together. And one of the most critical, important ways to make that clear is through the power of story. Okay, because the reality is we are an organization and the you is the donor. And why we are even in the same arena is because we care about the same beneficiary. Our Venn diagram crosses at the point of the beneficiary. And it's our job as an organization to help them see that overlap and that together we are doing this. And that happens through telling stories about the donor, about the beneficiary, and every once in a while about the organization, because no one likes a friend that only talks about themselves, right? You're not friends with them for very long, right? We talk about things we care about. We talk about how the things we care about are impacting us, but we've got to help the donor see that through the stories we tell. All right. Okay, so what does that mean? To tell a story, you have to have a protagonist who has a problem, who's looking for a solution. The donor is the part of the solution. And then we have to help them see that as they become part of the solution, they take on a certain characteristic. They become the person they want to believe themselves to be, right? So there is Johnny has a problem because Johnny's parents don't have the money to put food on the table every morning for breakfast. So Johnny goes to school hungry. There's a simple solution, and that solution is to give Johnny breakfast when he gets to school. Your donation today, donor, will make sure that there is food on the table when Johnny gets to school. So your compassion and your generosity will make it possible for Johnny to fulfill his dreams of becoming a doctor or a dancer or, whatever Johnny dreams of being. So it's the character of the donor interacting with the protagonist who has the problem that creates the different trajectory of the story. The donor is like in the hero's journey, the donor is like the person who's helping to guide the protagonist to their solution. So we all learned this story arc kind of thing long ago in school. It's sometimes hard to apply, but we just have to keep trying to go back to that. Wouldn't you say, Kate, that that's fundamentally where we want to go?
Absolutely. And I think personally, as a donor, I love to know like the idea of what my donation could possibly go towards, even if it's as simple as like a $20 could provide X amount of resources for somebody in like an impact statement. That really is something that does motivate at least me, and I've heard from others to say maybe I should give a little bit more so I could do a little bit more, or maybe, this is why I would want to donate this certain amount. I think having just at least a little bit of that more connection to the actual cause itself really does bring somebody in, rather than, like you had mentioned earlier, we are looking for your donation to help our cause. You're actually now kind of skipping over that and being like, we're helping for your donation to help this specific individual. You're really like bringing that into a more personal place.
And we know that works because look at GoFundMe. There are no
Right.
organizations, there's no 501c3 status, there's no credibility here. There's just people telling people's stories. And while donations to nonprofits are trending down, generosity through mutual aid groups and things like GoFundMe is skyrocketing. So don't be afraid to tell the story and focus on the relationship between the beneficiary and the donor, and let your organization sort of shrink and fade into the background. Okay, Amanda, please. And we do that through the singularity effect, right? One person, one problem, one point. That doesn't mean that the gift becomes restricted. Okay, with simple language like, your donation today will help put a meal on the table for Johnny and support the many programs and practices of ABC organization. Right there, you've unrestricted the gift, right? You're using a story to make the personal universal and the universal personal, just like a good movie or novel, right? We get into a movie or novel because we identify with the character. So it's our job as an organization to help potential donors identify with a character who is a person being helped by our organization. We cannot, most people in my world, cannot solve the entire problem. I cannot solve hunger. I cannot solve homelessness. I cannot cure cancer, right? But I can help one person who's in this situation. And that's what makes the difference.
For sure. I think one thing that I always think about as well, like when something is personal, when it's like somebody that you know, I think a lot of times about like if I've shared something to Facebook and been like, hey, this is something I'm fundraising for, then those friends, family members, and colleagues are more likely to give to me because I'm that little personal connection between this cause and the donation I'm asking for. And so again, tapping into those communities and being able to really truly ask folks who care a lot about your organization, it really again is it's still creating this common thread rather than just being like this general ask. Because like you said, as much as we would love to, these big macro themes that we're looking to deal with are just not a one solution type of thing. Unfortunately, of course, we wish it was, but being able to really hone in on some specific stories, small community efforts, that's really going to be the key, and especially when it comes to the ask for a donation.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go rogue on y'all and ask a question that came in because I think it's important to what we're talking about right now, with this kind of one story, one person, right? And I know there are a lot of organizations who deal with this. In this case, it's in the realm of senior citizens where they can't identify the actual people because of privacy issues. And I know that's something that we hear a lot. So, Janet or Kate, do either of you have a recommendation on how to tell that one person, one story when you can't talk about kind of the actual people?
Yeah, nonprofit fundraising writers need to consider themselves to be creative writers. And what I mean is you're going to tell the truth without telling facts. Okay, so you're going to get to the point without encroaching on someone's privacy. And you can do that by just simply changing the name, or by, I know the language that a lot of my clients use is, I'd like to share the story today of Mary, who represents the people we serve. So it's an amalgamation of a few people's stories. So if it's a woman with 3 children, they might make her a woman with 2 children. If it's a man who, lost his job as a construction worker, they might make him a man who lost his job as an accountant, right? Like, there's all kinds of different things that you can do to slightly alter the details and not invade someone's privacy, while you're still telling the truth. You're telling the true story of people who you are serving without talking about a person. Any other thoughts on that, Kate?
I think that I'm kind of relate in a lot of ways to this question because of the organization that I work with outside of what I do here at Bonterra. We serve a lot of individuals who we are not going to be able to share that information out to our donor base or to anyone that we're reaching out to. But we are able to capture quotes from those folks of like how they felt with specifically our transitional job opportunities. Feeling like they have, purpose in their community, feeling like they have, taken steps towards their goals. Those types of like more general quotes we've used for appeals, and we've also used on our website. So not that it ends up being able to like quote directly from a person, but it is still like the impact and the actual action that's happening in this job placement to share out to folks. So kind of, again, similar in some ways, but also able to keep things anonymous.
The other thing is that the person you're talking about doesn't always have to be a beneficiary, believe it or not. I've emphasized the need to focus on beneficiaries, but you can allow a volunteer to tell their story about why they get involved and the difference it's made in their lives and the impact that the work has had on them or something they've seen, right? You can have staff people do that. You can have former participants do it, especially if you have any relationship with people who have been, if you're in a social service area, a human services area, people who maybe didn't receive benefits from your organization specifically, but who were recipients of similar benefits in their life, right? I know that I have often helped folks who run food pantries to tell the perspective, because as a child, I received services from food pantries and things like that. So I can give the perspective and tell the story without being, I'm enough removed from it that it's not encroaching on my privacy or, re-traumatizing me, right? And that's the importance of having board members with lived experience, right? Because if you have board members with personal lived experience or family members with lived experience, that sort of thing, you are much more able to be true and tell stories that are true to the experience, without traumatizing current beneficiaries. So all of that is kind of in the background, big picture. Now we need to dig down into actually, how do you write this thing? Like, where do you start? Now, if you're a Network for Good Bonterra customer, you should already have access to the templates that are in the system that are written for you that can get you started. But if you don't, and you're starting from a blank piece of paper, start with the phrase, "I'm writing to you today because." If you literally write that or type that into your computer and finish that sentence, it's going to make you narrow down, right? You're writing today because there are children in our community who don't have a place to sleep at night. I'm writing to you today because I believe you don't want to live in a world without music, right? I'm writing to you today because something is going wrong in this world. Whatever it is, whatever your cause is, you start there. You engage the donor in their story through the beneficiary. So I just said I'm writing to you today because you don't want a world without music, right? I'm talking straight to the donor. You don't want a world without music. And I know this because you've attended our concerts, right? Like, and you bring the donor right into the story. I'm writing to you today because I know you care about the children in our county, right? Right away, the donor begins to see themselves in this story and sees themselves in relationship to this beneficiary. You want to create empathy, not sympathy, right? You want to connect the feelings that people share. No one wants to feel alone. Ethan feels alone when he goes to school because he's being bullied. Our program will help them, will help him, stand up to the bully or learn how to deal with the bully or mindfulness or whatever it is your program's doing to help Ethan, who feels lonely because he's being bullied. The donor doesn't want to feel lonely. The donor has felt lonely before. They know what it feels like. They know, right? So you're using those kinds of things to connect these two people. But what you have to do is, in your appeal, you have to leave the story unfinished. It's an unfinished story of need, so that when you call the donor to action, your donation today will ensure that the program is there tomorrow for Ethan when he needs it. That the the doors to the symphony stay open. That whatever it is, the call to action that you're asking the donor to do has to make a difference. If everything is successful and hunky-dory and you tell all the stories about all the wonderful things that have happened for Ethan or whoever, and there is no need, then you don't need my money. If everything's good, you don't need my money. That's what's happening in the back of my head. So you connect the donor to the beneficiary, you tell the unfinished story of need, you remind the donor that their generosity will change the ending of the story. And you ask them specifically, can I count on you today to give Johnny breakfast? Can I count on you today to help Ethan feel less lonely? Can I count on you today to keep the violins playing or whatever violins do? Right? Then you can go back and maybe delete the I'm writing to you today because phrase of the opening sentence, but hopefully it helped you get very clear and you tell the story and then you ask specifically the donor to do something. Does that make sense? Kate, do you have another way to say it that could help folks who are struggling with these thoughts? What are you thinking?
For sure. I think again, it's the same question that I kind of referred to earlier of like, where do I start? Genuinely, like, it's a good idea to sit down and think about that. Like, what is my goal for this end of year appeal? Like, do I have a goal, a number goal in mind for what I want to raise, or just increase individual donors, or bring people back who have donated in the past? That's one piece of what you want to do as an organization. But then this piece is that storytelling and that piece that really is incentivizing some piece of donation or some kind of donation or gift from folks, or at least letting them know what you're doing. So I think my biggest piece is don't forget to do this. This isn't something that really should be, oh, maybe we, don't have to do an end of year piece at all. Like we don't have to do the outreach. I know everyone has that awareness to do so, but I think to actually sit down and say, this is our goal, this is what we want to do as an organization, and then use this type of framework to be like, this is how we're going to do that specific kind of outreach and make it about right now and your goals. We have this goal of X, Y, and Z. It makes it a little bit more about that specific goal, but then bringing it back to the actual donor rather than, again, it's easy to talk about the organization itself, but this actually brings in someone to the story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can have a monetary goal, but it's got to make sense to the donor, right? If you write to me and I've only ever given you $25 a year and you're telling me you're going to raise you need to raise $100,000, that's going to be a disconnect for me, right? So you can mention the goal, it can be on your giving page, but in your writing, you really want to make sure that it's something I can do. Give $25 today, like use a specific number and tell people what that number is going to be, right? I think that's a real important point to help people connect to the difference their dollar is going to make, right? More than just on your monetary goal. Right.
For sure.
The monetary
Absolutely.
goal gives a framework of how much, like it, it might help me think, oh, maybe I can give a little more, like you said earlier. But it's all got to be wrapped in the relationship between the donor and the beneficiary, and the difference my action as the potential donor is going to make on that person.
Fully agreed. And I think too, like it helps, like if someone says, I have monetary goal of X, how are we going to do that? This is the how. So
Absolutely.
There are some folks in the audience here today who are kind of commenting on the fact that they work for kind of less of that direct one-to-one, as in like X dollar feeds one kid. Some folks mentioning they're in climate change or wildlife conservancy. Janet, you were kind of talking through some of those connections and those, pieces. Do you have any recommendations for those types of organizations who might not, have that quote unquote like person or dog, right?
So any cause we're working in because it will impact a person. Climate change is impacting people, right? Advocacy impacts people, even if we're in indirect services. I mean, I work with organizations who are supporting, like, providing resources to other organizations or mobilizing other organizations. Ultimately, we've got to get to the end result. What difference is this making in the world for people? Even when we're talking about animals, for the most part, we're talking about their relationship to people, except some vegan groups that really focus on the animals themselves, right? A lot of it is about people, right? And so, for example, the climate change issues, we have plenty of evidence of how climate change impacts people's lives, right? Every other day now, there's something on the news about the impact of climate change on people's lives. So we want to bring it back to the people. And then we want to make sure that we're telling the story in a way that people can see their dollars are making a difference. And it might not be your, $25 buys 3 diapers, which is kind of the price of diapers these days, right? It's not that anymore, but it's your dollar today keeps the information flowing to the schools where it needs to be, to the next generation, where so you tell a story that helps people realize why your work is so important, and then the numbers are more on helping people see that how important the work is and where their dollars will have an impact, right? You're without the research is a tough one, right? People think I'm just doing research. Without the research, decisions can't be made. And without good decisions being made, or decisions being made with bad research, has horrible negative impacts, right? We've seen this over the years, right? I remember when cigarettes were considered good for you, right? Like, I'm old enough. I'm an old lady, right? Like, so you always want to bring it down to something that I feel I can relate to and make a difference. Again, I can't solve the climate crisis, but if my $25 is going to help ensure that the appropriate research is being done or that the educational materials are being produced, then by all means, I want that to happen, right? So you've got to tell it in a way that makes that kind of sense. Okay, so a few things that should and should not go into a fundraising appeal. Remember, donations are an impulse buy, right? We don't want to list the ingredients, okay? So I tell the story of I'm a health nut with a chocoholic issue, right? And so if I'm looking for chocolates, I see the pretty package, I get a craving. The quickest way to stop me is to turn over and read the ingredients. If we are too busy listing programs and details of all of the ingredients of what makes our work, it's going to make me think, it's not going to make me feel, and my feelings are what make me make a donation. Okay, so don't get in the minutia of the jargon of the things that you do. Don't focus too much on the organization, focus more on the person. Use action verbs. What is their money doing? Is it educating? Is it feeding? Is it preserving? Is it warming? Is it empowering? More than just helping or partnering. Help them say, your $25 today feeds a family of 4. Your $25 today will preserve a flower bed or whatever, a garden, a community garden, right? That sort of thing. And then if ATRR, sorry, I didn't use this acronym earlier, but ask, thank, report, impact, repeat, right? If you haven't been telling the good, feel good success stories all year or in between your asks, and you need to tell some success stories to help people know that their money is going to make a difference, then you're going to need to do some thanking and some reporting impact in your letter. But otherwise, next year, do all of that in between your appeals so that your appeal is not containing all of that, because then you have too many mixed messages, right? You want your appeal to be an unfinished story of needs, saying that if you act today, these good things could happen. Words matter. Words reflect values. I'm just reading this because it's important. Words have the power to uplift or to tear down. So we have to ask ourselves, if our language is focusing on limitation, negative adjective first monikers, and victimization, we want to be person first, asset first, right? We want to talk about the dreams and the aspirations and the good qualities and the characteristics of the people or the communities we serve in ways that are true to who they are, not putting them in a box, focusing on their limitations or their problems. So I said, focus on the problem. Yes, focus on the problem, but do it in a way that is respectful and not labeling of the people being served. That's a whole other webinar. But I always have to put a reminder in of how important that is. So work on that. You want to be aware of the characteristics, the attitudes, the aspirations, recognize the gifts, focus on the future, not the past. Johnny needs breakfast because Johnny wants to be a lawyer when he grows up and he doesn't have breakfast. So, let's help Johnny get the brain cells firing and all of this because Johnny wants this kind of thing. I don't know, Katie, did you have thoughts there?
I think, again, just the biggest thing is I think there was a question that I saw come through of we don't want to focus on all the bad. And I don't think that is the point of this by any means, but I think there is some value in bringing that to the conversation. But then again, like you had mentioned, focusing on that future state where this is the unfortunate thing we're working and dealing towards right now, but we're going to be working towards some bigger goals in the future that could really make a difference. So there's a fine balance to strike between that.
You've got to, if there's no problem, you don't need my money. But
Right.
if the problem's too big, my money makes no difference, right? So there's got to be the reality that the money is needed, but there's also the hope and the end result that you have to focus on. You're focusing on the possible end result as a result of the gift. Even though you have all these other end results that are positive already, those were shared beforehand. The appeal has to say, hey, we still have work to do. Hey, there's still a problem. Hey, there's still need. And then ultimately, we want to make sure that our messaging is embracing the notion that donors give through our organization, not to it. Donors are giving to the cause of climate change. Donors are giving to the arts. Donors are giving, right? More and more in today's world, people are cause driven more than organization driven. So if your organization isn't addressing their cause in the way that they want you to, they're going to go find a new organization. They're not loyal to you unless you're showing them that you are loyal to their dreams and their visions. So you've got to write it in a way that helps people see that the organization is simply the vessel through which they are doing good in the world. So this, I don't think that we need to read every line of this, especially, as we are shorter on time, but there are some proven tactics. You will get this PowerPoint with the recording, right? Make sure that you think about these things. I actually don't see one important one. 14-point font. If you are sending a letter, make sure it is 14-point font or bigger, right? But short paragraphs, bold sentences, always have a PS. Four pages, double sided. So 2 pieces of paper, double sided means 4 pages. These are things that we know for a fact from lots of years of doing this that they work. So incorporate as many as you can into your writing this year. I think that is those are some effective phrases, and you can look at those. Just work them into your sentences as you write.
All right.
Is that it?
I think that's it.
I wanted those last 2 to be resources for you, that you can look at when you get this recording, because not everyone's going to be for everybody, but these are proven things that really work.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Kate, I think you had something you wanted to add to within the proven tactics, right? And just how folks are using technology to help kind of implement those tactics. I know that's something that you do in your day to day. So is there anything that you can add as well there?
For sure. I think that, again, it kind of brings it back to like using technology to support this. Like not every time you have to reinvent the wheel and try to do something new. As Janet mentioned, these phrases and tactics and things like that are all actually built into our technology because it's best practice. And so being able to use something that can support that is something that I talk about on a daily basis to folks and organizations. And again, trying to make life easier so you can focus on big picture things, be able to send really awesome appeals, but it doesn't take up that much time. So that's really what the technology that we use here is designed to help with.
Yeah, and folks, if you are interested in learning again about kind of those built-in templates, about having that starting point, having kind of that multi-channel communication built into one spot, and you are interested in learning more, I'll just leave a poll up again on the screen for those of you who are interested. We can chat through what that looks like, show you, work with some folks on our team. So I'll leave that up while We worked to address a couple of questions. I know we had some woven throughout, so I'll try to lump together as many themes as I can. But if you do need to jump, I did just want to quickly thank you for joining us for these 54 minutes thus far. I know it's a really busy time and heading into a busier time, so appreciate it and hope this was helpful. And to Janet and Kate, I hope you can see all of the praise coming in through the chat. If you can't, I will share it with you because folks are saying that this was really extremely helpful, inspiring, and really kind of helpful mindset changing and tactics that folks can implement right away. So just want to thank you both for really helping this group out, and I'll share the words of appreciation. So really thank you both, and thank you to all who joined. While I kind of sift through these questions, I know there was one at the very, very beginning that I meant to address. And so I wanted to come back to it and some of that big picture stuff. This one came in from Sue. Janet, when you were talking about the themes, right, and kind of like the branding, this question was about how long should that live for? Should it be for a whole year? Should it be for a specific campaign, a month, a week? Like, is there a recommended practice for how long those themes should be?
So sometimes it's possible to carry a theme through a year, sort of a motto and a tagline. But what I was speaking about here is specific to a campaign, every campaign that you do. And to me, a campaign is a specific way you're trying to bring in money at a specific time. So this is the time for a year-end campaign. So between now and December 31st, there should be some threads running through. But that can happen more than one time a year. Some people, like I said, carry the theme throughout, but it can get tough, because it's not your brand. It's an extension of your brand. It's a specific focus within your brand that you're using. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying. Another one that I saw come through a couple of times, and you touched on it a bit on the last slide, for the proven tactics with kind of the 4 pages. Some folks wondering if there is kind of an ideal length for an appeal. Some folks saying they've heard 1 page. Can you elaborate on what that is? What should be in those 4 pages per se?
So 4 pages is 2 pieces of paper, front and back, with lots of white space. And yes, that includes pictures and any pull-out quotes. It includes a lot of white space. It includes very short paragraphs, 2 or 3 line, not sentence, 2 or 3 line paragraphs, a lot of 1-line paragraphs that are bolded, right? Psychologically, having 2 pages, there's something that says this must be important if it's 2 pages, right? Even if you don't think that out loud. Having 2 pieces of paper, you look at who it's written to. So you want your name, Dear Janet, and then you look at who it's written from and you read the PS. And they do this. I mean, I don't know who does these studies, but studies show that this is a thing that people really do gravitate towards reading that PS. The longer these 2 pieces of paper in your hand, the more you feel engaged, and you're going to read bold sentences, and you're going to see your name on page 3, and that's going to draw you into the story there. And so those things will make you feel more engaged with this letter, and you are more likely to give. Very few people read the entire thing. The way you format it helps people to see the important points as they skim it. And it should be about 4th or 5th grade reading level. Also, simple sentences, short sentences, all of those things are really important to help the reader skim and scan through it. Not big block paragraphs. It shouldn't look like a business letter. All of those things make a difference. And there is lots and lots, years and years of proof of these things, right? And this is for mailed letters, of course. And someone did ask, I did see, are mailed appeals effective? Yes. More, as much as Bonterra is a great tool, most fundraising still happens through snail mail. The majority of giving still happens through snail mail. Email and online giving is growing as a channel, and it's really, really important to be part of the mechanism of everything that you do, but it's still, statistically speaking, I don't think it's hit 25% yet, if 20, right? It's a small portion of giving. So you definitely want to make sure that if you have it in your budget, you are sending out a mailed appeal. If you have addresses, there's always the ifs, right? If you don't have them, you can't send them, right? So.
Yeah, and Kate, I don't know if you had anything to add, or if not, folks are saying, should that length be the same for online appeals, for email appeals?
Sure.
You're both shaking your heads.
Yep,
Yeah.
shorter. Yeah. To add into like the physical mailer piece as well, like I've seen a lot of folks who say that they will open that physical mail, and the feeling of holding it and having it tactile in your hands will actually then send people to websites to then go donate online, or if they send that check back. So again, it's just that tangible feel. But when you think about how short an attention span is with being the day and age we are on our phones, that's a quick scroll by with an email or anything like that, and making sure that that formatting looks nice is another thing I talk about a lot. Like, what is that shorter attention grabbing piece when it comes to something online?
So I recommend writing the 4-page piece and then grabbing important pieces from it for your email. So it's the same content. You're not recreating tons and tons of content. You're using the long piece to take little pieces of it for email, for social media posts, to create your video scripts, whatever it is you're doing. You use that longer piece for that. So an email should be about 300 to 500 words.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. We are about a minute over. So I want to respect folks' time and both of your time. So I will unfortunately cut us off here, but I did want to, again, just thank everyone for being here. A big thank you to you, Janet and Kate, for all of your wisdom and expertise and kind of fresh perspectives and different perspectives as well. As I mentioned, it seems like it really resonated with folks. So really appreciate you both, and we'll be doing more of these sessions. We'll have a kind of last minute Giving Tuesday session up next for those of you who might be feeling the stress or panic of that. We've got you covered. Keep an eye on your email from us for an invite to that session. But for those of you who are in the thick of kind of the year-end prep and work and everything, best of luck. You're not alone. And really are appreciative of the work that you all do. So thank you so much to everyone for being here.